Steven Sotloff was an American. He was a respected international journalist in a part of the world where it is very difficult to be a Western reporter, certainly an American one at that. And the man joining me now sometimes has to make decisions and send professional journalists directly into harm's way. Tony Maddox is my colleague. He's also the executive vice president of CNN International, and he's the managing editor of that organization as well. Tony, it's one thing to be sending your troops into natural disasters and accidents. It's another thing to be sending them into war. And now it seems to be a whole other ballgame, sending our colleagues into places where ISIS has proven that it is ruthless and not willing necessarily to negotiate all the time. How is it you make these decisions?
Well, first of all, there needs to be a clear editorial imperative. It has to be a very strong story. It has to benefit from CNN's presence there. I always think that people expect CNN to be the voice of truth on these difficult and challenging stories. So if it's possible, we'll need to get in. So is the editorial imperative there? Then the next question is, how can we manage that assignment? How can we support that person in the field? What kind of exit strategies can we develop? How can we make safe in field if we need to? And how can we monitor and control that? What team can we pull together? And what time frame? So a lot of planning and logistic work goes into each one of these operations. And I would say, by the way, that for each one we sign off on, there's probably 4 or 5 that we turn down. There are always people out there with bids to go into certain places like this. It's a volunteer army at CNN, and people are very keen to do this kind of work. And there are a lot of journalists who want to do this kind of work. There are other journalists, it's a smaller group, and I suspect that James and Stephen were very much in this category, who almost have to do this kind of work. I spoke to one of our correspondents, I won't say who it was, off the back of a particularly hair-raising assignment, and I just said, you know, how are you? And this person said to me, actually, I feel really good. I feel a commitment to the people on this story. I feel a commitment to this story. And when I go there, and when I do reporting, even at substantial personal risk, I feel I'm honouring them and I'm honouring the story. I thought about that quite a lot. That's a tough way to live your life, but it is a part of what these people feel a need to do. And there will be others, and I totally respect this, who will look at this and say, this isn't for me, I don't want to do that. And we've had journalists who've turned down assignments with never any comeback from us at all. I totally get it. You've got to want to be there. You've got to want to do it. Now, I would emphasize for the benefit of the viewers that our people are very well trained. We have extensive backup in the field with security consultants, with the very best possible kit in terms of technology and safety gear, etc. And we do monitor these operations around the clock. What I fear is for the journalists who do not have that backing and who do not have that infrastructure and who, frankly, you know, are much more vulnerable to this kind of attack.
When you see the power of the videos that were released of Steven Sotloff and James Foley, it makes me wonder if it's time to stop showing. It's time to take the power away from the executioners who see the currency in creating the fear through the broadcasts.
Yeah, and that's a very good debate, because the truth is ISIS commit acts of unspeakable barbarism on a daily, hourly basis. But they know that if they target certain Western people and do it in a very stage-managed fashion, people will respond to it. A number of points to follow up onto that, really. Number one is, if the conclusion of this, I saw the piece that you showed from Nick earlier on, is that people understand just what a threat this group is, just how wicked they are, then they might feel to some extent they're fulfilling their own purposes, but we don't do it for that reason. The rest of the world needs to know what is happening. The rest of the world needs to know what a threat these people can be. And it will drive the story in ways which they may not want. I mean, that you made the point earlier on. This is going to force the hand of many people who so far have not taken such strong action against it. Maybe they'll need to think that. So we can overthink it. A big issue for us is that we don't want to put out any of their, you know, endless spiel about what it is they want and what it is they feel they stand for and what it is they think that they do. We try to broadcast information that's pertinent to the act of barbarism. But there is no, as distasteful as it is, one cannot get away from the fact that these videos will drive the debate. They will impact government policy. And it's not for us to say to CNN viewers, you're not allowed to see them if they're having that kind of an impact.